Hello, I'm Shudevi Thakurata from Srishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology. My paper is titled Design, a Reflexive, Reflective and Pedagogical Inquiry into Sustainability. I have noticed in my experience of being a design educator that many times, almost like an unintended consequence, well desired from a larger, wider point of view, many explorations, engagement, experimentations in the process of learning aspects of design led to deep and critical inquiries around notions of sustainability, something that I would not anticipate consciously as I designed the courses. These inquiries, when sustained, followed, and connected through a process, led to very interesting findings and insights. When these were interwoven, the relationships among the newfound perspectives of the micro and the systemic knowledge of the macro created a deep contextual wisdom of the inquirer's position, dilemmas, or role in the larger framework of the transitioning world. Often, this was a transformational experience for the learner and me as an educator. I therefore wanted to dive deep into my experience as an educator without taking any process or hypothesis for granted. In order to unpack some of the questions I framed here, I delved into my course plans, what my intention for each course was, the desired enduring understanding, the chosen focus areas, the essential questions that would guide the backward design that went into the course design. I also mapped the outcomes of these courses, both intended and unplanned. The processes that were followed along with the reflections and documentation of the students, along with my own anecdotal narrative reflections and documentation of these processes. I also looked closely into the visual facilitation that I generally engage in while having structured conversations with students in the form of opening and closing circles, Socratic seminars, cafe conversations, or conversation roundtables, to name a few processes. The visual generative scribing or sketchnoting that I facilitate became a treasure trove for many a powerful insight that mere analysis of an outcome would not be able to generate. Understanding a place as a complex adaptive system is something that I feel is a very, very important process in design education. Most courses taught in design education, quite obviously, are situated in a context, consciously or unintentionally. More often than not, there is a locational or spatial dimension to this context. As a part of designing a course, therefore, one needs to think how can one create engagement with the place and interaction with the people who inhabit the place in order to gain a deeper understanding of the context. Explorations that a design educator facilitates may not be just about the geographical, biological, geological features, but the social, cultural, economic, political, or ecological features of the landscape as well. Considering that people play an active role in conceiving, making, using, and thinking about the landscape in which they live, as a design educator, it seems very important to enable the learners to unravel the behavior and thought embedded in a landscape through multiple perspectives. The different methodologies that I bring into my classes in order to teach research for design combine design research, oral history, ethnography, participatory, rural appraisal, and narrative based inquiries, to name a few. Interestingly, the idea of a thick description, which is used in ethnography, also involves understanding and absorbing the context of a situation or behavior. It also ascribes intentionality to one's behavior. The intentionality is both present and future, so understanding a person seems deeply connected to the ability to interpret a person's behavior within the context in which the observation of the person happens. Meaning is a very important aspect that differentiates between a thick description and a superficial kind of thin description. I've realized that bringing in the idea of narratives make it very easier and relatable. Also, because the idea of using methodologies borrowed from diverse and yet interrelated disciplines like oral history and ethnography in design research is more than just doing mere theoretical arguments but experimenting with what helps in the process of sense making, the process of design synthesis in a practical way. And this, in my experience, becomes very useful when one starts observing, locating, connecting, collecting, and interpreting narratives found in and around the context. Narratives act as a missing piece or missing pieces, helping one to connect the dots. And more importantly, the intention of understanding has the potential to shift one's focus even through an ethnographic process from only humans to other forms of life. A bigger value of looking at the context closely and yet in a systemic way helps one move towards the realization of our own self as a relational reflection of the larger community of life or the social ecological self, and seeing in it the basis for responsible action out of enlightened self interest. This process, therefore, not just remains at the level of reflection of what we see, but also brings in an aspect of self reflexivity where we become more aware of our frames of references. We question why do we see what we see. Using backward design and constructing pedagogical processes to unravel places as a complex adaptive system, in my experience, allows this kind of deeper understanding. Tools can be used to unpack the intricate intertwining of elements within a system or between a system and its environment. This can also help in understanding the complexity which arises from interrelationships, interactions, and interconnectivities of elements within the system or between the system and its environment. Realizing the fact that dynamic systems are able to adapt in and evolve with changing environments leads to the idea of co-evolution. And it's this realization that can be constructed through careful pedagogic design where one learns to see the in-between, the hidden, the invisible, the unknown, and starts reimagining, reclaiming, regeneration, and redesign. Next is walking as a tool to read a place as text. Walking can be an extremely powerful tool in design. Walks can lead to many discoveries and help one form many perspectives of an experience. One can look at narratives as a binding force among people, place, other lives, and time. Through deep immersion, observation, conversation, interpretation, and finally, communication of one's own synthesis through walks can allow one to move from data to information, information to knowledge, and further knowledge to wisdom. Through walks, one can walk into the past in order to walk towards the future. One can walk as someone to gain empathy and understand aspects of inclusion in a very embodied way. From curated walks where the lens is guided by someone else or participants end up consuming information, interpretation, and experiences crafted by someone else, walks can be designed by a design educator as a way to reconnect with and learn from land, place, different forms of lives, and non humans as well, in order to engage in and thereby catalyze deep localization. Walking can be used to experience ways of being, knowing, doing, and relating with the unknown. And through the learning with hands, stories, senses, hearts, along with the heads, a form of decolonization happens within as one's inquiry becomes deeper and more authentic. Designing walks can also be given as a task to students as a way of inquiring and finding their own perspectives. The room for slowing down or pausing in the process of walking enables one to notice and wait, virtues which are rare in a fast paced world. In my experience, this really has a transformational potential. In this context, the idea of walkability as a measure of sustainability also plays a major role in understanding how a place, especially a city, is constructed. Apart from health, environmental, and individual benefits, social and recreational importance, the idea of a walkable city as connected, convivial, conspicuous, comfortable, and convenient also brings forth the idea of a unique identity of built environments and a sense of belonging. Designing walks as a pedagogical tool can be very powerfully connected with facilitating mapping as a process. Here, walks can be treated as a meaningful process of wayfinding, including social wayfinding, which helps in reimagining the process of cartography. We do talk about the need and power of observation and conversation in processes of art and design. The ability to see, listen, talk, and interact are crucial to not just any form of research, but also framing problems, understanding systems, thinking design, attempting to solve wicked problems, gaining empathy, and even user testing. Mapping, both literally and figuratively, is one of the most essential parts in this meaning making process. Students have shared with me in many conversations that one of the ways in which a non-linear, holistic, and systemic understanding about the landscape became possible was through the diverse and creative processes of mapping that were facilitated in the class. Maps are visual representations of a landscape in layers. They help one navigate, locate, and find directions, help in exploration and give information. Many a time, the information gathered in research is in the form of oral narratives or visuals of what's found or seen in a context, rather than concrete data in text or numbers. The information in the process of mapping becomes visible, connected, complex, yet clear, multi-layered yet organized. And the process of reading the maps requires a lens to see and perspectives through which different kinds of sense making occur. This allowed many of them to have a critical and creative engagement with the recorded data, and in some cases with the process of recording itself. Mapping what's there and mapping what was there through the collective memory and oral narratives of people enable one to predict what might be there in future through cartography processes of visualizations of thoughts and insights. This ability to be intuitive about the future, which is otherwise volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, is certainly a desired 21st century skill. In a fast changing world, ways of sense making of the world cannot be static. I propose that it's not just absolute frameworks, tools, and templates that one uses in design education that can make learning more meaningful, but the evolution, transformation, and adaptation of learning methodologies that need redefining, relooking, redesigning. And often that starts from a process of unlearning by the educator herself or himself. We no longer can ignore bigger questions around the finiteness of our planet, facing ever growing uncertainty and complexity. We should be asking deeper questions on why should we be sustained before asking how to make ourselves sustainable. This initiation with the why followed by what if many believe is the only way to inspire people to change their behavior and co-create what is called diverse regenerative cultures adapted to the unique biocultural conditions of a place. And this shared story is believed to be powerful enough to keep everyone innovative, creative, and collaborative as we journey towards a more sustainable, regenerative, and thriving future. Some of the other things which are extremely important is to learn how to frame powerful and genuine questions. When the intention behind questions is a genuine intention to learn more in terms of the in-betweens, it opens up as an authentic and fresh question and framed by reframing old queries. The situation and architecture of questions can be a very significant learning for any student. Understanding the construction, matching the scope of the question with the needs, and looking into both implicit and explicit assumptions within a question can certainly make one ask relevant, purposeful, recognizable, fresh, evocative, and more importantly, genuine questions, which can lead to possibilities and invites fresh perspectives. The other aspect of design education which I found very important is looking into the past to look towards the future by documenting one's own journey. Design is a process of productive sense making, and documentation is a very crucial part of it. Teaching documentation and reflection are two interrelated and interdependent processes which immensely help in sense making. And it moves the perception of documentation as a boring chore to something which is really creative. Creative and reflective documentation helps one map processes, find structures and patterns, locate something in relationship with its surroundings. Rather than being static and frozen, it's evolving and insightful. It's both a reference for the past and a window to the future, being a creative record of the outside and the inside, the concrete and the abstract, facts and imagination. Interestingly, documentation is a way of mapping one's journey figuratively, and mapping can be ways to document one's journey literally. Last but not the least, the educator should be helping learners connect the dots through a process of synthesis. I would like to give some examples of how, through active actor facilitation, this entire process can be made possible, where the meta learning from the different courses, even though sustainability was never the goal or the aim, critical understanding of notions of sustainability were made possible. For example, through a course where students were looking at food as a lens to understand the history of a city, they ended up also understanding various issues of sustainability with respect to socio-economic practices existent in the city. A course which was designed to understand the textile industry and its evolution in a place led to critical understanding on the relationship between vanishing traditions, geopolitical realities, socioeconomic factors behind consumer choices, and so on. A course which was about teaching students how to use camera as a lens to inquire, allowed them to understand many practices and beliefs that made them question their own assumptions around what sustainable development was and ask whose development is it in any way. A course which was about learning research methodologies and mapping led to the discovery of the horrors of vanishing lakes in a city in the name of development. In order to design walks for others, one ended up questioning how accessible is a city or who decides territories for humans and other lives in a city, or notice that the duration of walking inside a shopping mall often beats the duration of actual walks within a city. This process of facilitating meta learning eventually does what? Along with skills, knowledge, and character, they can be interwoven by redesign of teaching learning methodologies, which is essential in a four-dimensional education and lead to a deeper understanding of both the self and the extension of the self in a larger ecological context. And eventually, this definitely affects the choices one makes as a designer at a later stage in life. Thank you.